7 days after the charter boat dropped me on Selene Island, I could no longer remember why I had come. I knew the outline: my wife's sudden death, the sleepless months that followed, the application I mailed to the Aegis Grief Study. But when I tried to summon the smell of smoke that had clung to my clothes on the night of the fire, it slipped away like a wet stone. I could feel the interior space where the memory had once lived, but it was vacant, antiseptic, as if someone had scrubbed the walls. Dr. Iskra, the project's lead physician, said the vacancies were a good sign. "Grief is a parasite," she told the 8 of us during orientation. "We're offering a serum that teaches the mind to starve it." Her voice seemed to echo through the tiled hallways even when she spoke softly, and something about her eyes, a brightness verging on fever, made me uneasy. Yet every participant nodded, some almost hungrily. The island held little beyond the clinic: a ring of volcanic rock, a small dock, and a greenhouse where trial technicians cultivated the luminous lilies whose pistils allegedly provided the serum's active compound. We were discouraged from wandering, though no fences existed. I explored anyway, partly because insomnia dragged me from bed each night at 2 o'clock, and partly because movement distracted me from the blankness growing inside my skull. During those walks, I noticed odd things: cigarette butts in the sand, even though none of us smoked, gouges in the palms that suggested someone had hammered nails to suspend heavy equipment, a waterlogged journal whose ink dissolved when I touched it. All minor curiosities, but they accumulated like static until they hissed. On the morning of our second injections, the clinic cafeteria buzzed with confusion. Marisol, a retired violinist who had lost her husband to COVID, kept drumming her spoon against a mug. "I can't remember why I hate rain," she said. "There's a memory right behind a wall, pounding to get out." Kenji, the young engineer whose fiancée died in a mudslide, looked equally rattled. "Does anyone here recall the month before they arrived? I can't see anything, just a gray sky and sirens." I felt a chill, even though the air conditioning in the cafeteria was perpetually broken. "I still remember my apartment burning," I said. "But there's something else, just out of reach. Every time I focus on it, my nose fills with this odor, like oxidized metal." No one responded directly. Instead, an uncomfortable hush settled, and we turned to watch the gate that separated the cafeteria from the administration wing. Guards would arrive soon with the pre-dawn injections. The silence felt staged, as if we already knew our lines. The serum itself looked innocuous, a thin, clear fluid delivered into the deltoid. We lined up, exposed shoulders, and accepted the needle. 40 minutes later, the dull roar inside my head quieted. Memories associated with my wife's death receded as though someone had rolled them into distant cupboards. Grief relief at last. But along with it came a strange aftertaste, as though I had bitten into tinfoil and lemon. And every person I passed in the corridor had that same faint, puzzled glaze in their eyes, as if the lighting kept shifting. That night I dreamed of a broken mirror locking me in a labyrinth of reflections. Each fragment displayed news footage: news anchors screaming without sound, cities draped in ash, people waving frantically from rooftops as if water rose beneath them, though no water was visible. I woke with my heart battering my ribs. Across the dorm hallway, Kenji vomited. I heard Marisol whimper through her door. "Where are the children?" I wrote down everything before the details evaporated. The serum retained only the grief it was asked to delete. Everything else remained. At least that was Dr. Iskra's promise. Yet we all suffered from the same missing slices, and these slices had nothing to do with our individual traumas. Or did they? Could a single catastrophe intertwine them? The following afternoon, during group therapy, I posed the question. Dr. Iskra listened, palms pressed together like a steeple. "Collective hallucinations are common in clinical settings," she said, smiling at one of the interns who jotted notes. "Your subconscious minds share a thematic landscape, catastrophe. So overlapping imagery is inevitable. It does not indicate an actual event." Then test us, Marisol challenged. Hypnotize me, put me in an MRI, whatever you need. Find out why we're all forgetting the same window. Dr. Iskra's smile froze. Another session, perhaps. When the meeting ended, she motioned me to stay. Alone, she studied me as though measuring bone length. Your insomnia, she said. We could administer supplemental sedatives. I don't want sedatives. I want answers. Her expression softened, oddly compassionate. Mr. Reyes, when the mind encounters extreme stress, it may fabricate global disasters as a backdrop against which personal loss seems smaller. The serum expunges grief, but it also peels away self-protective delusions. You're seeing the scaffolding that held your trauma upright. I left unconvinced. Night again. Clouds burst in the distance like silent flares. From my window, I spotted a reflection in the courtyard pond, an array of blinking lights that resembled city towers. But no city existed within 100 miles. Only ocean. I realized it was mirrored sky, faint strobes from satellites, or maybe something lower, bridging the sea. Compulsion drew me outside. I padded barefoot across damp grass until the perimeter path darkened. The shoreline glimmered. There, floating just offshore, was a buoy crowned by sensors. A red diode winked in slow intervals. Next to it bobbed a second buoy, then a third, and beyond them dozens more, forming an arc that surrounded the island like a necklace. The pattern suggested quarantine. I knelt and cupped water. My fingers tingled. Chemical residue? I scooped more, but still couldn't place the smell. Something acidic, reminiscent of scorched plastic. Suddenly a shadow loomed. Kenji. You see it too? Yeah. I think we're not supposed to leave. The trial protocol forbids external contact during evaluation, I said, as if reciting a contract. He shook his head. No, I think the world outside doesn't exist anymore. A laugh shot from me, sharper than I intended. But his eyes held no mirth. He offered a wrinkled pamphlet, the same consent form we'd all signed. A redacted paragraph I hadn't noticed stood out. In the event of an exogenous event resulting in mass casualty, Aegis retains authority to continue clinical procedures under shelter-in-place mandates. The words shelter-in-place buzzed like a siren. That night, I rummaged through the dorms and discovered most participants had begun hoarding relics. Photographs, diaries, trinkets, anything that anchored them. Yet the items looked charred around the edges, as if they'd been plucked from a fire we didn't recall. Marisol clutched a Polaroid of her honeymoon in Florence. The image was melting into blankness, leaving only 2 outlined shadows on a bridge. She wept without tears. Sleep came ragged. I awoke to screams, not from the dorm, but outside, rolling across the island like thunder. We converged near the greenhouse. A technician in scrubs was kneeling beside a toppled crate, his wrist slashed by broken glass. Something inside the crate writhed, pale vines entwined with miniature mouths. The luminous lilies, evidently, were carnivorous. Dr. Iskra arrived, sedated the man, ordered everyone back. I lingered and saw her whisper into a small communicator. The only words I heard: containment stable but subjects restless. Proceed with final memory rasterization tomorrow. Memory rasterization. The phrase stuck like a thorn. I cornered an intern, a timid man named Lowell. At first he denied everything, but panic pried him open. The serum isn't just grief suppression, he said. It can target any neural engram cluster. Once the higher-ups realized what happened outside. Outside what? Lowell swallowed. The mainland. There was a sequence. Cascading failures, power grids, bioweapons, riots. Nobody knows the casualty count. Aegis believes trauma on that scale would decimate civilization. They want a seed population free of the memory, to rebuild without panic. We're prototypes. My blood iced. You mean they edited our memories of a global catastrophe? They're still editing, he whispered. Every dose strips more. Tomorrow's injection finishes the wipe. I found the others and relayed what I learned. Terror warped into fury. We debated escape, but the island lay 30 nautical miles from shipping lanes. Marisol suggested commandeering the clinic's heliport, yet there was no helicopter stationed. Kenji wanted to hijack the supply barge scheduled bi-weekly, but the next run was 6 days off. Our only leverage was refusal. When dawn arrived, we barricaded ourselves in the cafeteria. We stacked tables against doors, unplugged freezers, and shoved them aside like bulky chess pieces. Dr. Iskra arrived, flanked by guards in pale uniforms. She tapped the glass with her knuckles. "Children, open up." "We are not children," Kenji shouted. She sighed, as if disappointed by poor pupils. "The serum works best with consent." Marisol pressed her hands against the glass. "Tell us what happened to Florence, to Tokyo, to the whole damn planet." Dr. Iskra's eyes flicked just once to something behind us. A TV set had switched on, though none of us touched it. Static coalesced into images. Blue skies, bustling boulevards, laughter. Stock footage, obviously. "The world is intact," she said, but her reflection shimmered. Her lab coat's hem quivered in a non-existent breeze. It dawned on me that the glass itself was a screen, projecting an illusion. Reality behind it remained hidden. I swung a chair and smashed the barrier. Shards rained. No alarms. Beyond lay not the tidy hallway I expected, but a dark cavity where wires dangled. The clinic seemed to be an elaborate stage constructed inside a larger structure, perhaps a bunker. The others stared, paralyzed by the scale of the deception. We pushed deeper, climbing a stairwell that led nowhere, descending corridors that looped. Behind panels, we found racks of servers humming, cables snaking like roots. Kenji accessed a terminal. He was an engineer, after all. Lines of code scrolled, labeled Event Theta Suppression Script. Dates spanned 2 months prior to our arrival. He pulled surveillance feeds. One camera showed Seattle's skyline ablaze. Another displayed drones spraying mist over a city I recognized as Barcelona. A third, the most recent, depicted a conference table in Washington, D.C., draped with black cloth under which lay bodies. Marisol covered her mouth. "It's real." Sirens blared. Metal shutters slammed, sealing latticed vents. A voice, computerized but bearing Iskra's cadences, announced, "Phase 4 commencing, subjects failing compliance." Gas began to hiss through floor grates. Pink, sweet-smelling. Panic fractured cohesion. Some pounded on walls, others curled into balls. I grabbed Marisol and Kenji and sprinted toward the greenhouse, remembering its roof vented directly to open air. Halfway there, Lowell stumbled from a side door, clutching an inhaler. He tossed extra canisters to us, antidotes to the gas he claimed, before collapsing, eyes rolling. We reached the greenhouse, barricaded doors with bags of soil, then climbed ladders onto the roof. The ocean glowed pewter beneath dawn. Buoys blinked. Beyond them, nothing. No ships, no contrails, no evidence of life. The mainland horizon, so distant it blurred, looked smudged, either haze or smoke. From this vantage, I saw that the clinic's outer facade was welded steel painted to resemble stucco, a fortress masquerading as a spa, and around it, beyond the gardens, the island bore scorch marks, blackened craters. Kenji traced one with his flashlight. "Bomb tests," he guessed, "or impact sites." We formulated a plan, shut down the servers that scheduled our next injection, find the emergency raft Lowell had once mentioned, and paddle beyond the buoy cordon where our phones, if any towers still functioned, might pick up a signal. Descending the greenhouse ladder, we heard footsteps. Dr. Iskra stood amid the lilies, maskless despite lingering gas. "You'll die out there," she said quietly. "The world is a tomb." "Then why keep us alive?" I asked. "Because memory creates chaos. You can't rebuild on a foundation of horror." She touched one of the lilies. Its petals folded around her finger. We intend to cultivate clarity, seed by seed. Each of you is a garden. We prune the blight so society can grow anew. Kenji advanced. Society requires consent. You agreed, she reminded. You begged us to erase pain. Not truth. My voice cracked. Marisol raised a spade she'd fetched from a tool rack. Open the doors, Iskra. Let us choose. To my surprise, the doctor did not retreat. She merely closed her eyes. Choice is a luxury fewer than 1% still possess. Out there are feral populations devouring one another. Here, you can be pure. I realized she believed this with her whole being. The serum, perhaps, was in her veins too. Kenji lunged for her communicator. A scuffle, the spade clanged. Iskra fell, lotus petals scattering like confetti. We bound her wrists with irrigation tubing. Guided by Lowell's earlier directions, we navigated service tunnels to the server farm. The gas receded, having risen and escaped through vents. Our lungs still ached, but adrenaline drove us. Power conduits crackled overhead, feeding the memory rasterization arrays. At each node we yanked drives, smashed them. Sparks showered. The mainframe whined like something wounded. Then, pitch black. Backup lights flickered red. Somewhere distant, a ventilation fan died with a groan. I think we just blinded them, Kenji said. But we also just blinded ourselves, Marisol replied. Emergency beacons guided us to the launch bay. 2 inflatable rafts waited, pre-packed with rations. Perhaps Aegis had planned to relocate us after the purge. We dragged one toward a roller door. Manual crank, heavy. I heaved with muscles I didn't know I still owned. The door rose, revealing dawn fully broken, and a fog bank laced with drifting ash. We launched. Salt spray slapped my face. Behind us, I heard sirens crescendo, then abruptly cut. I turned. The island's ridge erupted in fireballs. Self-destruct? The buoy lights winked off, then flared white and vanished beneath waves. For hours we paddled. Kenji examined a satellite phone we'd scavenged. No signal. The sea somehow felt denser, as if infused with grit. We passed charred timbers bobbing like coffin lids. Once, a bloated carcass of something whale-sized surfaced, pockmarked with lesions. Night settled. Constellations looked unfamiliar. Some stars glowed coral red. Radiation. My mind teetered. I clung to the few memories I still recognized. My wife's laugh, the shape of her sleeping profile, the dance she invented for our wedding. I feared even these would unravel. We took turns sleeping. When dawn returned, mainland appeared as a bruise on the horizon. Skyscrapers sagged like rotting teeth. Smoke speared skyward in slow columns. No roads, no moving vehicles, no human silhouettes. Marisol cried out. A cargo ship lay aground, hull torn, deck littered with containers bearing the Aegis logo. Her voice shook. They evacuated supplies, not people. Kenji scanned with binoculars. I see signage for refugee zones, burned. Could be pockets of survivors, I said, hopeful. We'll search, Marisol declared, voice steeled. But first we decide, do we want to remember everything, even if it breaks us? Silence. Then Kenji spoke. Truth first, reconstruction second. We agreed. But how to restore what had been chemically shaved? Lowell's inhalers were merely antidotes to the sedative gas, useless for memory return. Yet back on the raft, within the medkit, we discovered a small vial labeled SRM Delta, reversal. A note, scrawled by Lowell perhaps, read, "In case conscience overrules calculus." We debated risks, neurological seizures, psychosis, possibilities endless. But if we remained partially lobotomized, how could we warn others? At high noon, light glaring off debris-clogged waves, we drew straws. I lost. That meant I'd be first. I filled the syringe, slid the needle beneath my skin. The fluid stung like nettles. For a breath, nothing changed. Then a roar, a whole city's siren, thundered inside my skull. Images cascaded. my wife and I watching news of coordinated cyber attacks shutting down power grids. Weeks later, hospitals overflowing with hemorrhagic fever, governments issuing shelter orders, Aegis promising a miracle vaccine, riots, fires. The final broadcast before nets failed, clouds shaped like inverted mountains rising over coasts. Weaponized aerosols, they said, dispersing something that shredded lung tissue. My wife, coughing crimson. I cradled her as streets erupted outside. I remembered boarding a bus bound for a research sanctuary after she died. Selene Island. Agony racked me. Yet amid it, clarity. The world ended not all at once, but in increments of trust surrendered. First to corporations, then to fear, finally to amnesia. I toppled, convulsing. Hands held me, Marisol and Kenji's faces blurred. When the fit subsided, I lay panting beneath a sun too bright. I looked toward land. Even in ruin, it beckoned. Not as a place to heal, healing felt obsolete, but as a monument to our failure to remember. I understood then that grief was never the parasite. Forgetting was. I met my companion's eyes. "Your turn," I whispered. They hesitated, but only briefly. One by one, they injected the serum's reversal, each buckling under the weight of unredacted memory, each rising, shaken but luminous with resolve. Wind stiffened. We set oars. None of us spoke. Language felt brittle. Yet a covenant formed in the silence. We would carry the truth like a torch, however small, against the dark engineered to smother it. As we entered the harbor whose waterline was choked with ash and bone, I realized I did not feel lighter. Grief pressed heavier than ever, but alongside it lived purpose, an alloy stronger than the serum's oblivion. And I knew that somewhere behind shattered windows, beneath collapsed roofs, other hearts might still be pulsing, waiting for the spark of recall. So we rowed, 3 specks against a continent of forgetting, hauling with us every memory the island had tried to steal, determined to seed a future that could bear the weight of its own past, no matter how monstrous.